My method for doing a type of stitch known as a cross stitch, and this stitch is one of the options that you can use when you've got two pieces of leather or material that you're wanting to stitch together edge to edge. It's both a somewhat decorative stitch and it's also a very functional stitch, and I find myself using the cross stitch quite a bit when I'm working on various projects. So we've got our pieces here that we need to join together, and we've already got our needles set up and threaded with a good length of thread. A note about the cross stitch is that it's usually going to take more thread than something like the saddle stitch is going to, so bear that in mind. You may end up needing a little bit more thread than you originally anticipated, and that's okay. If you have to stop midway through your seam and cut a new length of thread and start again, that's perfectly fine. It's not going to hurt anything. How I get this stitch started is I take both my needles simultaneously and I put one through each of the first holes in both my pieces. I just pull those through and I make sure that I try to keep my thread even in length. So now I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to cross over with one, push it through that top hole again on the other piece, and repeat that with my other thread. I'm going to take it across, back through. Now at this point I can go ahead and cinch this down a little bit. You don't want to crank on it because you don't want to risk tearing out your leather. And you want to make sure as you go, too much tension will cause your stitch line, your seam to pucker, and you don't want that. You want this seam to lay nice and flat like that, clean and uniform. That's your ultimate goal. But there, we've got ourselves started. And from here, I'm going to grab my left-hand side thread. I'm going to cross over diagonally to the next hole down on the right side. This is why this is called the cross stitch, because you're crossing over. Then I'll grab my thread from the first hole on the right side, cross over diagonally to the second hole down on the left side, and you'll see that your thread will make a nice X crossing over. Now all I need to do is to remember that my left-hand side crosses to the right-hand side first, all the way down, to make sure that my entire stitch line is clean and uniform. Or I could stagger it, left first, then right first, and left first, but it's always nice to bear in mind either keep the same layout, right over left or left over right, or stagger it in a predictable pattern, and it will help the visual appeal of your overall stitch line once you're finished. So once I've got that done on the front, the back side is going to look a little different. I'm going to do the same thing that we did in the very beginning. Instead of crossing down and going in a diagonal, I'm going to simply cross over my seam with both my threads straight across. I can very carefully, gently cinch that up a little bit. Make sure my pieces are still clean and uniform. And that is a completed stitch. So now we just continue that pattern all the way down. Go diagonal across to the next hole down, left to right. Then we do right to left. We flip it over. And I've been doing my left hand thread first, so I'm going to continue doing that. Left hand thread first. Right side, these both go straight across on the back side of our leather. Flip it back over and cinch it down. All the way down your line. Left over right, right over left. Left to right, and right to left. As you can see as you go, this gives you a very vivid, very pretty in my opinion, stitch line on the outer face of your project. So I'm going to go ahead and finish running this stitch line all the way down, and then I'll bring you guys back and we'll look at how you finish off a cross stitch. We've got our stitch line finished. Nice beautiful cross all the way down the full length. Our pieces are nice and uniform, joined together securely. Now we've just got to finish it off so we can cut off our extra thread and move on with our build. I'm just going to go straight across down here at the bottom with both my thread lengths. Now you could stop there if you really wanted to. You could just trim these off, then you could melt your ends and press it flat, and you could call that finished. It may not be the most secure way to finish off one of these stitch lines, but it would work. I'm going to go ahead and go just a little further. I'm going to go back through like so, just going straight across like we always do, all the way down the back of our stitch line. Cinch that down. Now I'm going to backstitch one of my cross stitches here. I'm going to follow the same pattern of overlay that I used coming down. Only this time I've got to reverse it to make sure the right thread, or the proper thread, is laying on top to blend with the rest of my pattern. So my right hand side thread is going to go back up first. And there we've got our cross, our diagonal cross. Then my left thread. Like so. And now once I'm here, I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to run underneath the back side of the very last stitch that we did in our stitch line. Pull that down. Nice and snug. Again, we're not cinching it to death. We're just snugging it up so it doesn't go anywhere. So we end up with that. Now, I can go in and I can trim my thread ends off. Just got those little tails there. This is a very wax heavy thread. This is a very heavy thread, and this is a very wax heavy thread. So, see, I've got my tails melted down and pressed flat now, and there is my completed, finished cross stitch. I can go to the front side here with this thread since it is so wax heavy, and I can give that a little bit of heat. It's going to help melt in some of that excess wax and help clean up the overall appearance of my stitch line. You guys can see there, a lot of wax melted off and soaked into the leather. This leather hasn't been top coated or finished or anything, this is just some scrap. But there's our completed cross stitch.